Hello, it's Alex, the Bookubus. Today I'm back with another Nightmare Queens video where I talk about vintage horror from the 1970s, 80s and 90s written by women, and today I'm going to be talking about The Punishment by Doris Shannon. So, The Punishment by Doris Shannon was originally published in 1981, and this Fawcett Crest edition came out in 1982. I would describe this as a gothic family drama with some horror, paranormal and mystery elements. So if you like V.C. Andrews, then I think you might like this one. Because yes, there's incest here as well. So, what is The Punishment about? This one is about essentially a family reunion, although some of these family members have not actually met before. The family in question is the Quiller family, and the patriarch is Rayburn. He's a very charismatic gentleman and seems to be able to charm anyone he meets, and his family seem to really love him and hold him in very high regard. But as the story goes on, we find out that actually some of them are in fear of him, and he really does rule the family. But our main character here is not actually directly related to the Quiller family. This is 19-year-old Tammy, and she has some kind of special gift. She has some kind of psychic abilities, but she's never really been able to fully understand them. She was very close with her father, and he might have had some similar type of ability and would try and help her to use hers. But he died in an accident some years ago, which set Tammy into a catatonic state, and she was then sent to a psychiatric hospital / boarding school and has lived there ever since. And her mother, Dorothy, has never accepted Tammy's ability and has generally thought she was a bit crazy and is kind of glad that she's out of her hair, really. Anyway, after the death of Tammy's father, her mother, Dorothy, remarries, and she is now with a guy called Jim, who is part of the Quiller family. And the story picks up sometime later where the family are going to meet for this Quiller family reunion. They are meeting up on the coast of Maine and are going to be travelling out to an island with a large building that used to be a schoolhouse, but has been abandoned for many years, and, you know, of course, perfect place for a family getaway. So we do have quite a lot of characters here. I think if I'm remembering correctly, there are 12 members of the family in total, plus there are a handful of other characters who are not family members, but are part of the story. So there are quite a lot of people to keep track of, but I did think the author did a really good job of detailing these characters well enough and early on enough, so I didn't actually have a hard time keeping track of who was who and remembering how they were all related. Once they all get to this island, which is, you know, very windswept and rocky, and there is this ominous looking building which used to be used as a schoolhouse many years ago, and a couple of the other characters that are part of the story are a husband and wife who have lived in the area for many years, and they are going to be present on the island for the duration of the visit to be a kind of maintenance man and like housekeeper cook for the party. And one night they tell the family about the history of the area, and we find out that decades ago there was a family called the Winchfields who came from out of town to this remote area and built this building on the island, and they turned it into a schoolhouse, and they would bring orphaned children there in order to have them live and be educated there. But of course that's not the whole story, and there was definitely a dark and sinister past related to this family, and they got up to some horrendous things involving these children that they had taken in under the guise of housing and educating them. So the people in the local town found out about what was going on. They decided to take the law into their own hands. They travelled over to the island and violence ensued. So naturally, the Quiller family, finding out more about the history of this place, some of them are quite entertained, some of them are horrified, but yeah, none of them are really actually having a great time at this family reunion. A lot of them didn't even want to be there in the first place. Some of them are not getting on particularly well with the members of their family that they're just meeting for the first time. As the story goes on, we also find out about the family dynamic and the interfamily relationships between the members of the family. We find out that the Quillers aren't exactly the happiest of families, despite the facade that they put up for the general public. There is the aforementioned incest, there is violence, all sorts of wrong stuff happening here, and all to keep the patriarch Rayburn happy. Another of the characters here is Nigel, who is a long-lost grandson of the Quiller family, and he is a little guy. He's called a dwarf in the book, but I'm gonna say little person because I believe that's the preferred term nowadays. And he was a really great character. He was really interesting, and there was one particular scene that I really enjoyed involving him where he is bringing up a topic for discussion one evening about how genetically things can be passed down through families from generation to generation, and his idea is, what if murderous tendencies can be passed down? I don't want to go into too much detail on that, but it was really interesting because he brings up a bunch of real true crime cases and kind of puts it into the context of the story. So I thought that was really well done and yeah, really fun. Anyway, Nigel and teenager Tammy strike up a friendship. They're kind of two of the more outsiders of the family, but they get to know each other well and form a real friendship, which again was another favourite part of the novel for me. And I don't want to say too much more about this one, but yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happens on the island involving both the Quiller family and the Winchfield house on the island and its horrific past. So I really enjoyed this one. I rated it 4 stars. I thought it was a really solid read and definitely kept me entertained throughout. I liked her writing style. Even though it was flowery at times, it was also kind of no nonsense at the same time and kind of had a self-awareness about it too. There's also a romance element, which wasn't a big part of the story, thankfully, because that's not really my favourite thing, but it was there and I did think it was well done. There are a couple of more kind of info dumpy sections where we're getting a backstory or, some kind of story within the main story, but I thought they worked really well also and didn't feel like it took you out of the pacing of the story overall. It definitely goes into that overly dramatic, soapy style family drama at times, but there's definitely a lot of dark stuff going on as well, and there are some gruesome scenes in the mix. We've got some violence, there is some sexual content including incest, rape, there's child abuse, there is murder and death and cannibalism and psychic powers. Is this book anything groundbreaking? No, not really. But is it well written and entertaining with interesting characters and an interesting plot? Absolutely. So those were my thoughts on The Punishment by Doris Shannon. A little bit about the author. She was born in 1924 and passed away in 2012. And she had written about 20 novels. About half of those, it seems, were mysteries written under a pen name, E.X. Giroux, and the others, it looks like, were a mixture of historical romance and gothic romance from the 1970s and 80s. So I'm definitely curious to dig a bit deeper and see if there are any a bit more in this vein with a, you know, a bit of a darker horror edge, because if there are, I would absolutely pick them up. If you have read this one or any others by Doris Shannon, please let me know. I would love to hear what you thought. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!